right, let's try this one more time. It should work better now. I think it might have been my Wi-Fi, but we here. We here, and it's lit. Okay? Y'all ready? We ready. It's about to go down. All right, let's see if I can send the invite now. I need to hit Timbo up and see what's going on with the IG. Let's see. Look, baby, Nia, what's good, fam? Trying to get this internet to work right. The last one, yeah, she told me. I think she can be back in. We're just waiting on Candice to pop back in. Well, why is it doing that? Let's see. We just wait on it to get it together. IG is acting a little funny today, but what we will make sure. Okay, there go Candice. Let's see if I can send a request now. Boom. See if you can request to join, Candice, and see if I can get you in that way. It's my window. I can't stand the rain. Ah, here it comes. Okay. Finally cooking with some grease. Let's see. How much she said? Okay. Maybe I need to get off the Wi-Fi. Ah,
We're
finally.
can you hear me and all that? Okay, cool. I wasn't
Absolutely.
logged in before, but I don't know what happened to your Wi-Fi, but I logged in and you were logging out.
Nah, that's how it is, and that is why
Oh.
I can't stand them. You know, did I did I did come on,
Was
give me
this the
my
result of
props,
your
you know?
research? Like, she would like Missy.
Is
No,
this would
it's
this
raining
work?
out
Is
here. It's
this
raining. Like, I love Missy. This is perfect.
mm-hmm. See? You thought I wasn't gonna
Yeah, no,
pull up
this is
with what
great.
I needed. Well, family, I am glad that everybody has pulled up. This is day 2 of What a Week, and we have none other than the amazing Candice Iloh. Candice is a first generation Nigerian American writer, dancer, and author of the 2020 National Book Award finalist. Everybody looking. We have gotten into it, right? Yes, yes. And the 2021 Prince honoree, they have performed their work around the country, most notably at the, how do you say that? Is that
Oh, the New
Nuyorican
Yorican.
Poets Cafe?
New York
New
Geekin.
Yorican. Okay, Poets Cafe. In New York City, the New York, New Yorican. There it is. my extremely southern accent would
I
definitely
mean, I
come
told
out at
myself it's
first.
New York and like Puerto Rican together. That helps. That helps. That helps a little
Hmm.
bit.
Word, word. Okay. It a whole lot, a whole lot. And let's see what else. I mean, there's so many things here. The Women in Poetry and Hip Hop celebration at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum in Baltimore, and as a part of the Africa in Motion Performing Arts Series at the National Museum of African Art in Washington D.C. I mean, competitively, Elo has advanced the final rounds of the Graffiti DC Slam, Beltway Poetry Slam, and 11th Hour Poetry Slam.
It's
Am I
Elo. You
pronouncing
got
your
it.
last
You
name right,
got it right the second time.
Elo?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna work with me. Work with me. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's not much that Candace hasn't done. So, how are you?
I'm pretty
And
good.
how are
I think I'm like emailed out today. Today was like a heavy email
you? Yeah,
booking stuff kind of day, and it wasn't exciting. It wasn't like a fun day to be an author, really. It's just like, ugh. And it's raining outside, but like I was really excited
yeah,
about coming on live. It's been like months since I've done a live, so I feel good about that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad you're here with me. Okay, what? Oh, the Waffager slid in. Let me pin the book here so everybody can know. Uh-huh. Almost. Uh, uh-uh. Good. Why is my okay? Boom. And now pin. And we're cooking with grease.
All right.
All right. Now I don't know how to move this stuff out the way. All right, here we go.
Awesome.
Now we're good. All right. So now that we have the book pinned, I can finally, after Wi-Fi issues
We're
and
here.
everything, we can finally get to it. So,
Yes.
first thing, Candace, me and you talk about education all the time. And I saw that you completed a 3-year residency as a writer in
Hmm.
residence at the Bronx Academy of Letters, supporting high school students in the production of new and fresh youth centered magazine content.
Hmm.
What on earth was that like? And because I mean, it sounds like to me like the elimination of all the boundaries a creative person finds when they become a teacher and an opportunity to get at the root of where learning takes place.
Yeah,
Can
so
you kind of speak to that?
I was teaching in New York City for about 10 years, or New York City and DC for about 10 years, and the last 8 years as a teaching artist. And I got invited to like hang out with this group of ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders for their eighth and ninth periods. And they had a school magazine, and I got to just like spearhead the school magazine, and that was like an elective class for them. And I realized like there were no like check-ins on my class. Like I didn't get evaluations, I didn't get invited to any of the staff meetings. I
Hmm.
wasn't included in a whole bunch of stuff. And so I was just like, I'm gonna do whatever I want with this class. And so I just started to be really experimental with it. And I actually just wrote about this recently in an essay, but like I really like to get young people to like tell stories about the stuff they never talk about. And so I started having them do an anonymous
Yeah.
issue where I let them tell a true story that they've never told anyone before, and they could leave their name out. And the only person who would know that it was
Mm.
theirs is me. And so that's how they got their grade. But no one in the school, none of their friends, no administrators, no teachers would know who wrote this stuff. And it was really, really, really great. It was so, it was so good.
Uh,
And I don't know, it was really crazy though. It was the Bronx. So, so I had a lot of characters in my
yeah.
class. I'm not gonna even act like we were having a great time every day. We weren't having a great time every day. They were pushing my buttons. We had lots of kind of, altercations between kids in the classrooms, but It was one of the first schools
Yeah.
that I've ever worked at where I saw them not like send a kid home because they exploded. Like they got to go out in the hallway, cool off. Like if they were cursing, they were cursing. If they were angry, they were angry. And that's what made
Yeah.
me stay there for 3 years because I was just like you guys are into the way that I am into education, which is like you let kids be kids and you let them fill it out and you let them have their emotions and they'll keep
Yeah.
coming back. Like they'll pay attention in class because they'll know that you care about them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. How do you think that like adds to you being a YA author? How does that time that you get to spend with them, aid you in what you
I
do
mean,
as an
I
author?
came in as a poet and I left that assignment
Hmm.
as a novelist. And it was so obviously everybody looking is a novel in verse. It basically is the marriage between me being a poet and coming of age story. And there was no way that you can like work with young people and not have all these stories and have all of this like stuff to talk about. And they were just like the source of my
Yeah.
inspiration. Like every time someone asked me like, what inspired this story? Why did you become this? And I'm just like, my kids, like my high school kids were they brought the juiciest material. Like people want to
Yeah.
act like YA is just for kids, but like it is the juiciest stuff to read. Like everybody should read YA.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I wanted to prioritize it because for two reasons. Mateo just adores your work. And so I've always heard him mentioning your work, mentioning how you have this attention for craft. And it was funny because when I was doing my recon, I had in my notes this random note that said people I've got to read this year. And your name was there. Right. And I was like, look at
Yes.
what do they call it? Serendipity. I mean, what is it? Two. It's 222 today. Two,
I woke up to a
two
text this morning
today.
where a friend was like, do you know what day it is? Do you know what day it is? Do you
Like,
freaking know
dude,
what day it is?
dude.
Like, yeah, it's a special day. It's never going to
Yeah,
happen again.
yeah. So it's never gonna happen again. So I mean, if we don't manifest the way the internet makes it feel, is like if we don't manifest today, we
Anyway,
can't manifest
anyway,
tomorrow. You know,
anyway.
and I'm like, so are we just done manifesting things after today? Is it a
No,
wrap
I
after
mean,
two
I
two
think
two
I think
two
people
two?
really love to like do things on certain days because it makes them feel like it's a big deal. I mean, it could be. I don't know.
It could be. And that was the crazy thing. This is just like a random conversation. Like I was driving, I was like, you know, I mean, it could be special, but I mean, tomorrow could be too. Like, I don't want us to like lose this like all this wonderful energies out there. I want us to
I
lose
only
it.
thought
Tomorrow
about
could
it
be
for a few
special too.
seconds. I thought about it
But
for a few seconds
anyway,
and then I was just like, okay, it's Tuesday.
I know Bowl didn't just say we in room 222. Rick Ross, Ross did it for all of us, man. So I'm a double back because
Mm.
I am interested in this too. So in a 2016 essay titled "On Being Present
Oh
with
wow.
Black and Brown Youth Today," you talked about the way you entered. Yeah, I know, get deep. The way you entered a classroom and thought about how students are deprived every day of the simple satisfaction of honest answers. You later speak to your students never having been free in reference to their inability at the time to make choices about what they would read and write
Hmm.
about when presented with options. What, if any, is the connection between not being provided honest answers to questions and not being able to make
Wow.
choices about one's thoughts for
Wow.
students in the
Wow. That's a
classroom?
really big question. I don't know if this is like the best answer for the question, but I just feel
Mm-hmm.
like there is a freedom that comes with being told the truth. Like if someone's being honest with you, you
Mm-hmm.
realize that you can also be honest. And that means that you have lots of choices in what you can say, what you can do, what you can choose to be in life. When people are lying to you, I think that lies create limitations. And it just really
like that.
You don't have all of the information that you need. You don't see all of the possibilities of the kind of person that you can be. You just really are not seeing the whole thing. And so it just limits your way of thinking, like
Mm,
just the way that exposure expands us. Like going off to college is not like a big deal because of college, really. I think it's because you go somewhere else and you're exposed to other things and other people and other, sources of knowledge. And that's what actually creates choice for a person. Like, that's what Everybody Looking was all about, was like,
yeah.
she's going off to college thinking she's going to be one thing, and she's exposed to all these other things. And then it's like, oh, I actually could do something else, and it could actually be a lot better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That I think is so important
Mm.
because I ran into that same issue when I first started teaching English. That for so long, you talk about this in the essay if anybody want to go check it out. About for so long, they're kind of focused on giving adults the right
Hmm.
answer because of state testing, because of just the way that they're presented with things, especially in like literature and other things, well, other disciplines. And so a lot of like that first amount of time I'm in the classroom is like breaking them up to the possibilities
Oh,
that
yeah.
writing has. They're like, how many sentences do I need? I'm like,
That
however many it
question
takes to get your
drove
point across,
me
you know?
insane when I was teaching.
Yep.
Like, five
Yep.
sentences, six sentences. I'm like, I don't think about the number of sentences when I'm writing. It's like I stop writing when I'm done with the thought. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. And I think it's because they were
Oh,
given
yeah.
that formulaic mode of writing, prior to where
Hmm.
they think they have to get a certain amount. Um, let's see then. Let's go. Let's
Oh,
let's
yeah.
dive on into the book here. So I know you are a first
Yes.
generation Nigerian American, right?
Yes.
And so is Ada, right?
No
Well,
one who's
Ada, is
American
that
is
how
going
you?
to pronounce it correctly. It's Ada.
Uh,
Yeah, you yeah.
Ada, and it's in the book too because they try to they make fun of
I
like the
mean,
way
the
the A
the
sounds.
the
Yeah,
actually a secret
I'm
is,
gonna.
and not a secret anymore, but that's not really her name. It's what her family calls her. So I never actually give her name in the book.
Mm,
And yeah, because it's more of a title in Nigerian
okay.
culture, like you're the Ada of a family. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Okay, okay. Well, with both of you guys being first generation Nigerian Americans, in your latest newsletter, you wrote about how you didn't dream as much as a child, not in the classical sense. It felt nearly impossible considering that you believed that your life would end with the rapture by age 12. You believed that, 16 wasn't coming and that Jesus was on the way back, and you was just like, the hell with dreams, right?
Trauma. That was real trauma.
I'm reading it. I'm reading it. Yes, yes. I'm reading. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, oh man. And so you said that you quietly shrugged off all these things that like your grandparents were trying to like put on you with, and responded like, I'd be
Yeah.
dead by then.
Yeah.
It'll be all, I'll be gone. Um, and that with therefore at first my
Hmm.
dream was to be good, right, is where you kind of get to be a good girl, good enough to be found worthy when this wretched earth passed away. From what I gathered in my reading, familial instruction and religion and the understanding of it go hand in hand. Ada's father instructs her through a
Hmm.
religious lens constantly. What are the ramifications of that in terms of the freedom and liberation of
Whew.
Black girls like
You
her?
coming with it. Okay. So I mean, speaking from experience, there's a lot of kids who are raised
Hmm.
in religious households grow up with lots of fear. It's just internalized fear of messing up and not being good enough and not being found worthy of, like, going to heaven when you pass and all of those things. And I think that it is hard to be free when you come into this world thinking that there is only one way to be. Like, it is really, freedom
Yeah.
is like, what's included in freedom is exploration and trial and error and making mistakes. But if you're constantly just thinking about, like, following the instructions of the adults in the room, being found like acceptable to God, following scripture, like, elders in your church looking at you and watching everything that you do. It's really impossible to do the things that people who are free do. Like, it takes a lot to become
Yeah.
your own person. It takes a lot to like be a liberated being. I argue that any of us are really free. Like, I think life is about like moving toward freedom. But if we live in this country, there's a good chance that you're not free. There are certain things that you have to follow and
Yeah.
listen to and abide by. But the first step toward being free is actually having the room and the space to mess up. And like, being raised in a household that has all of these religious rules and things like that, it's like there are big ramifications for messing up, and you don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah. My students have a terrible time with like you when like for instance when you talk about like slavery and you're talking about different modes of oppression, saying what they would do if they were in this situation. And I always tell them, I'd be like, you're not free right now.
Ooh,
You're doing exactly what you're supposed
ooh,
to do. You move when the bell
ooh.
tells you. You sit where you're supposed to, right? You say you would rebel,
You're
but you do
here.
exactly what you're supposed to.
Right,
And then they're just looking
right.
around like, you know?
It's true.
Yeah, so I dig it. I dig it. I dig it. All right, so let me see if I can pull this one off. So a doll's life is an ebb and flow, functioning
Hmm.
just beyond binaries throughout the entire story, edging her way beyond the boundaries and then flowing back to the other end of the spectrum to break the threshold on the other side. In what ways do you think it's masochistic to hide oneself? And how can reaching for one's own understanding provide safety?
What were you doing earlier today when you were coming up with these questions? Because I just feel like,
Do you know what really just happened to? Dig this, Candice. Watch this. So in your story, I'm gonna say the question again, but you finna be like, so in your
yeah.
story, you have these verses where you break down these words, and the words are safety, hide, reach, masochist, and possession.
Wow. Why are
In
you
the
trying to use
sentence,
my book
in the in
to
the last
school
sentence
me?
there,
To
in the
school me with my book.
I just wanted I just want to make the
Wow,
poet
you did
happy,
your
you
research. Like,
know?
I forgot
And
all the words I
and
used.
so that that's that's what happened. So I'll say the question again while you bask in the
What's
ambiance
it?
of my reconnaissance.
This is crazy. This has never happened before, and I'm just sitting here like, what?
I know.
Wow, you better write. You
I
better write a
try. I try.
question.
Look, and it was like the last one I put together. I was like, oh, this one right here, this might be my best
You probably wrote it down and
guess.
got up and walked away like, wow,
I
wow.
I was like, yeah, y'all. Yeah, yeah. Like it fits too. It works. Yeah, it works. Because it's masochistic for one to not explore, right? Like
No,
it's
the
cagey,
question is
and
it.
so
Wow,
mhm,
blew me away. Wow, I
yeah,
need to hear
yeah.
it again though, because like,
I try. Here it comes. Here it comes. All right. So, in what ways do you think it's masochistic to hide oneself, and how can reaching for one's own
I can't.
understanding
I really
provide
am over this
safety?
question because, well, I'm gonna do my best because wow, it's like I set myself up.
Okay.
Wow. Okay,
You
so I
did,
think it's
yeah.
masochistic to hide oneself well, if you're a feeling person. If you're a feeling emotional
Hmm.
person like myself, I think it's masochistic because it can feel really painful to hold your feelings in. It can feel like someone is suffocating you, someone has their hand over your mouth. And so I think it's masochistic in that sense, and it also is masochistic in the sense that hiding yourself means that you never get to be yourself. Never getting to be yourself means that you never get to actually have anything that you want. That's how I see it. And I feel like our lives are
Yeah.
about making ourselves happy. Like, we didn't ask to be here. So I feel like your life is really about finding like why you're here, what makes you happy, what brings you joy, what makes you feel good. And hiding yourself doesn't give you the opportunity to actually arrive as yourself and see how the world is going to interact
Yeah.
with you as you, right? And like only you can elicit certain responses in other people. And if you're always hiding, you never get to see what that is. Like I'm a writer because I really
Yeah.
like to evoke things. I really like to make other people feel things because I think feelings make you act. Like it's really hard to motivate a person who
Yeah.
has no
Yeah.
emotional connection to what you're saying, like at all. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it stunts you from the beginning. It's really, really uncomfortable to hide your whole life. There are people who do it. I don't know how they do it. I think, wow, it's really impressive.
Yeah.
Like you can do that your whole life.
Yeah. It yeah, and it's like, that other end of like being a masochist is like you like are running towards that pain, right? Because you kind of think it's enjoyable, or at least that's how I was understanding the word. And so I think like you're thinking that fitting
Hmm.
in is what you need to do
Hmm.
so you can feel good, right? But it's not, and that's why it's when I noticed what you were doing with the definitions, I was like, that's why it's so important to reach out, and that's what Adah's kind of doing through. I think it's Sarah,
Hmm.
Derek, Kendra, all these different experiences where
Hmm.
she's flowing in and out, right? Like getting right up to the boundary, and then like the water's kind of crossing it and it comes back, and so I mean I think that's what
Oh yeah,
humans should be allowed
absolutely.
to do. And a lot of, and a lot of what we receive when we get right there at that threshold is like,
Hmm. Hmm. You
nah,
about to make me go
you
back to
know
my own
yeah,
book and be like, wow.
I
You
was
know,
fitting, you
there's
were
a thing
fitting,
like I've
you
I've
was fitting.
realized like now that I've started to write more often is that once I finish a story, I kind of
Mm,
forget having written a lot of it. Like usually when I have these
yeah,
conversations with
yeah,
people, they're reminding me that I wrote certain things and I'm always just like, wow, it's like I blacked out a little bit. And the story took maybe, I
yeah,
think it took
yeah.
5 years from beginning to end for it to come out. So, I mean, how much do we remember from 5 years ago?
I was gonna ask, like, what is this like? Because I think people think that poetry is easy, right? Like when you're writing
Mm.
a novel in verse, what is that craft process like? Because like I'm reading it and listening to it, and the way it works and sounds. And I know I like you just from when we talk a little bit, I know how important not sounding extra,
Hmm.
you know, fluffy, right, is to you, and everything like just kind of locks into place. What is the process like crafting a story out of poetry and
Oh,
structure? Because you
yeah.
got poems in there
Hmm.
that are like, you know, that show like the space between conversation, and then you have like, what is
It
that
was a
like
whole
putting that
process.
together?
I mean, the story came to me as verse. I didn't know how to write prose when I started this. And so, first of all, that's how I was thinking about it. And then, second of all, I studied Jacqueline Woodson's Brown Girl Dreaming. And then, before it was
Mm,
published, Jason let me see Long Way Down so that I could see how he had done his verse novel. And then during my MFA program, I read like 9 or 10 other verse novels to get an idea of like how do people do this. And so in my mind, it was like this is all one ongoing poem, like just like if I just don't stop the thought, I just keep going. Except my book
yeah.
was nonlinear, so like if you read it, you realize I go back and forth in time. I play with different ages. At a
Mm,
point, my agent was like, "This is more like a children's book because there's so much that happens as a child." And so there was a lot of work I had to do to get the
yeah.
present day. But I my method was using the last line of each poem to help me start the first line of the next. And then when I was done with the whole
Okay.
thing, it took some tweaking because I moved things around. Like the way that I originally wrote it is not how it ended up getting published at all. The first 15 pages that you guys see right now actually had come in like the second third of the book. So it was like it was way further in, and now it's the first page. And so it was really, it was sound for me. So like hearing the last line and thinking about how I wanted it to sound as someone who used to perform my work, that all helped me to put it together. It was kind of musical. I cared deeply about the integrity of each poem, and so you'll see some verse novels don't really be like poems. Some verse
Yeah.
novels are just short
Yep.
lines. They're not
Yeah.
really, they don't employ any devices.
Hmm.
They don't have a background in poetry, so they're not really using any of the tools that a poet would use. But my ego would
Yeah.
not allow me to have a poem that wouldn't be able to stand alone on a page by itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Because this is, I think, really my first time making it through one twice. Um, and I was like, okay, I need to get into some more verse, right? Also, if you're just coming in, I forgot to do this with Darnell because he was cooking, I was cooking. But if you do have questions, please drop them in the question box. And you also missed the greatest question of all time that I asked. But that's on you. You'll have to catch the replay. Let me see. We got one in here now. Oh, but you can't. Oh, okay. I didn't know this. I can't show the question if I have my badges turned on. But anyway, this is from Pickens Kids Read. This is actually family. How can we parents encourage free writing?
How can parents encourage free writing?
Hmm.
I don't think it's as simple as it sounds. I think that, well, me as an educator, getting my students to get to a place where they actually free wrote easily every day started out with the environment that I created. And so kids aren't just going to come in
Mm,
and trust that they could write whatever and you'll hold it and not penalize them for that
yeah,
immediately. You have to create a space where you're being super honest. You're kind of putting yourself out there. I shared a lot of things with my kids as well. And so that made them feel, I think it gave them permission to say some things because, yeah, I put myself on the line as well. And so there was me being honest with them, me sharing my own life with them. I gave them lots of prompts. So I made it kind of easy the way that a worksheet is. It's like, I feel most powerful when I feel most like myself
yeah,
when someone says da da da. Like I give them the words to start with. That's really helpful. Um, Sometimes I use images. Sometimes I tell them, forget about form, no paragraphs, no sentences. I just want words. Whatever words
yeah,
come to your mind, just put, it doesn't have to make
yeah,
sense. So like abolishing rules is really helpful. Incorporating different kinds of media. So letting them watch a video and then say, respond to that. Or like if you're going to finish that line, what would you say? So giving very loose, so abolishing the rules, taking the structure out of it, and kind of giving them something to respond to, elicit some type of emotion, so that way they're talking back. And but before all of that, creating an environment where they don't feel like they're going to get in trouble.
yeah. I one thing that you said that I think is super helpful for the kids that I've taught is eliminating some of that structure too. Because what I always tell them is like just get it out. And what will happen is a lot of them come to me and they write that long
Every
paragraph,
time I'm like,
right?
I can't
And
even,
I,
I
yep,
can't.
I tell them just I'm like, put it on the page.
Hmm.
And then we make the next week and a half about where those complete thoughts end and begin and where we can get paragraphs and what sentences need to go
Hmm.
where. Because it's like, I don't
Hmm.
know what's happening in terms of, um, whether it's happening in elementary or if it's like that they aren't doing the work of writing like they are doing the work of
Yeah.
communicating via social
Yeah.
media, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like they communicate and they write on social media like that. Like a lot of things are just seeing, right? And so because that's kind of their normal mode or go to, I think that's what you kind of have to, I guess you're like
Hmm.
building that balance back up for them. Since they're kind of way up here on that end, you're trying to balance that out so they know where each of those
It's a
kind of
challenge.
exist. I don't know. Because I know I've always text. yeah, I take way different from how I see my
Yeah.
students text, and I think it's because
Mm-hmm.
I came like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, yeah,
Oh yeah.
excellent question, family. Um, so, Adah questions the validity of God's words by critiquing the American nature of the names of his disciples
Mm-hmm.
in one of the verses, right? Can you speak to this critique of the relationship between American imperialism and Christian imperialism and Adah's exploration of why she
What
can't
in
pray
the
outside his
world? What
name?
were you How long were you preparing these questions? Because I feel like I'm not even smart enough for my own book right now.
Jill did the same
What?
thing to me. She was like, she said,
Who
Jill was
are
like, who
you?
even
Like,
are
look
you?
at
Like,
all these tabs in my book right now. Like, well, actually, we're matching. We're matching a little bit. That's how I do my books. Yeah. But you have a
yes,
lot more
yes,
in yours. That's
yes.
wow. Okay. Can I get that question one more time?
Yep,
Because
yep.
my
I have
brain
to.
is just like, what just
You ready?
happened?
All right, all right. So we're talking
You
about
said, what in the
who.
world,
We're
Jared?
supposed to about what in the world, Jill? It's pleasing me so much when that like that pleases me
Readers
so much
just
when
be
y'all
like,
like.
let me see if I can get you to not understand what I just said. I'm smarter than you. That's what I'm about to show you right now.
No, no. All right, all right, all right. Here we go. Can you? Okay, so Adah's questioning the validity of God's words by critiquing the American nature of those names,
Hmm.
right? Matthew and the homies. American. Can you speak to this critique of the relationship between
Mm,
American imperialism and Christian imperialism, and Adah's exploration of why she
mm,
can't pray outside
mm.
his name?
I got it's
You
I'm
see it?
seeing
It's there.
things. Yeah, you're such a teacher. You're like, grab that right there, that one. I
No,
think
it's there.
that
Yeah.
so at that point in the story, I was just trying to point out the fact that she's like, these sound like regular ass names. And so, my name is regular. I'm regular. It just, I don't understand why these men are kind of an authority in my religious life and like my decision making in a way through these scriptures. And if their names sound regular, I don't know what the difference is. The difference must be that they're men. Like it just must be
Yeah.
mean that
Yeah.
they're men, and they sound like American men. They sound like, names that you might hear in a corporate space. And she's a
Yeah.
teenager, and so she's really just starting to question like the familiarity of the sound of the names. And then this idea that the
Yeah.
only way that my prayer is going to be heard is if I say in Jesus' name or in such and such's name, which is something I still think about. Like I was, raised in a very religious household, and I honestly didn't question this early, as she is in the book. Like I didn't really start
I
to
was
ask
saying.
questions
Yeah.
like that until like later stages in college. But I, for a long time, even when I started questioning, it was hard for me to meditate, pray, say anything without saying by God's grace, in Jesus' name, or like it's almost as if I didn't say these things, everything I said before that was
It
void.
was a
It's erased.
null and
God
void.
didn't hear
Yep.
me.
Yeah.
And so I really was trying to
Yeah.
like emphasize how weighted words and names are for kids without them even realizing it. Like the way, anybody that's been an educator, teaching any teenagers has had the experience where you say one little thing to a kid and they get really upset or they start crying or they just snap.
Yeah.
And it's just, so I focus in on the name thing, and then I focus on how, like, as an American child, as a black child, you might be associating that with white men. And like they're,
Yeah.
going to an HBCU at the same time, like she goes off to an HBCU and there's all these things that start to happen where she's like, these things are not adding up. Like, I'm supposed to be following this path, but also learning these things is making me kind of like question that stuff over there. It just all is, it all is really, really
Yeah.
confusing. And yeah, on my journey, it was going to Howard, having my African American studies teachers pointing out certain things about language and American politics and religion and like how they intersect, where I just was starting to be like, I didn't even question that. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, listen, you are questioning my questions, but they are inspired
Oh,
by
thank you.
how amazing this work is. When you're talking about like how um, you might not have done that at this age, and that she's I think a teenager when she's doing that questioning. It makes me think about how earlier in the book she's talking about how her dad prays before they do anything,
Hmm.
and it's starting to make them late. And she's like, why can't we seem to do anything outside? Why can't we seem to do
Hmm.
anything with our own strength? Like why do we have to kind of look without? And I was like, man, because I got this auntie, and my wife is on right now. Man, my auntie will drop down. We get, and it's everywhere. So we go in Walmart. She drop down, and she do it so quick that
What?
I don't notice she gone. So she'll drop down. She'll drop down in the middle of the open doors, and I go on to get the basket. And then when I'm talking to her, she ain't right beside me. I'm like,
What?
she wrote. I
This
might
is
look at my little brother
wild.
like Reese back there praying, ain't it? And she does it
Wow.
everywhere. She has this Bible, and it looks like the first one. All the covers off of it, and that thing is like this. My auntie, I'm gonna play this for her when I see her again, and she gonna be like, "Why you had to tell about this?" She drops
Wow.
down anywhere. You could be trying on clothes, boom, she praying. Receipt, receipt.
Wow. Like a
God got
physical, like getting down on one's knees anywhere. Wow.
knees anywhere. Look, my wife said she did it the
I
last time she came to. Nope.
I
As soon as
admire
she
the
came in the house,
commitment.
yep.
You know, there is no shame. She's like, listen, this is what I committed to. I'm gonna do it anywhere. I don't care what I look like.
I mean, it is
Boom,
it
she
is one of
praying.
the funniest things of my entire life. And she gone, yep, boom, she every single time.
Hmm.
So I want to go back to something you were talking about when you were like, sometimes those novels that are in verse don't uphold the
Hmm.
craftsmanship of every poem. Um, in your latest newsletter, you questioned the pull of the industry towards the performance of oneself in reference to your dreaming of
Hmm.
sustaining
Hmm.
yourself by being yourself. You talked about how all the roles presented to writers these days aren't always rooted in the actual work of writing, and that you remember and yearn for the time when people in a room were in a room because they were actually nice at what they do. How are you staying away from that and making space for those who do, while simultaneously staying true to
Hmm.
your dream?
Hmm. I mean, a lot of what happened to me when I was at Howard was I started this journey of like figuring out who I really am. Um, And I have done a lot of self work. So, a lot of spending time by myself, a lot of like leaning into all the things that I like, which are like dance and film and spending time in community, like going to concerts, all, just exploring, 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 exploring. And it's taken me a long time to get to this place where I'm very clear about who I am and who I'm also not. And so, I think that that's like a long way of me saying that one of the ways that I'm doing that is I'm continuing with that tradition in myself. And so I anybody that
Yeah,
knows me personally knows like it was just like a few months ago even Jason brought up something I forget what we were talking about and he was like, I know you can't lie, Candice. I might just but I know you can't lie. And it's true. Like anybody that knows me personally knows that like
yeah,
it's really hard for me to be dishonest. And so
yeah,
I continue to spend a lot of time by myself and I continue to nurture the parts of myself that are that way. Because I like those things about me. I like that I'm not performative. I like that I'm really awkward, and all those years of being a loner in high school and being outcast because of my culture and the way that I sound, the way that I look, whatever it may be. Those things are sort of cemented in me, and I um,
Hmm.
I really just pay attention to those things that are still cemented in me and that make me unique. And as a artist, I'm
Yeah.
starting to notice that like there is an audience for every type of author, and there are people who appreciate me being just like this. And I try to just lean into that every time I see it, and that's also what I'm processing in the
Yeah.
newsletter. Um, like I'm processing like when am I shining and when am I not? Right? Like if I were to try to do what everybody else was doing, I honestly wouldn't shine. I'm not great at TikTok. I'm not great at the Snapchat. I'm not
Yeah.
great at all these like new things that are happening that are like outside of the work. And so I just focus on where I shine. I try to get really good at the things that I am good at. Like really, really great
Yeah.
at those things. Like
Yeah.
writing a newsletter is my lane over me making a viral video easily.
Yeah. Yeah. And you killing them too.
Thank
You
you.
killing them. They are giving me the first one gave me a lot of insight into. I think it's the first one, but like
Hmm.
control and having to relinquish control in terms of creating your cover, which your cover game
Thank you.
is cold. And I know even this one was a little contested, but it's just dope that like you said, like that you're really honed in to like giving us a product that you know that you're proud of, and the newsletter gives us insight into where those struggles might be and how you work your way out of the struggle or
Hmm.
into some sort of understanding for it. And I just really appreciate them. So if y'all are on and you haven't
Oh, thank you,
subscribed, I
Corinne.
promise go do it. It is awesome.
Thank you.
It is awesome. Let's see here. So I also read, let me see, because you're gonna have to help me when I say it wrong in depth, probably. Your new books that's coming. The synopsis says,
The,
what's
yes, I
hold
was
up,
about to. You
break
want?
this house.
I'm about to.
Okay.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
oh,
I
oh,
got it.
oh, oh,
Yes. Yes, break this house. I am so excited for it because the last one just has me just ready to get more of your writing. And so the synopsis has how do you say the
Yamina
first and last
Okar.
name there? Yamina Okar. It says that Yamina Okar left Obsidian and the wreckage of her family years ago. She and her father have made lives for themselves in Brooklyn. She thinks she's moved on to bigger and better things. She thinks she's finally left behind that city and she would rather forget. But when a Facebook message about her estranged mother pierces her new bubble, memories of everything that happened before her parents' divorce come roaring back in. Now she must find and reckon with the truth about her mother and the growing collapse of a place she once called home. How do you want this story to resonate with young people and just readers in general? Because, like you said,
Hmm.
everybody looking is for everybody. Like, I went to it thinking I'm finna read, because in my mind, for some reason, YA is like, middle grade or something. For some reason, that was how my mind was working. And your book reminded me that it is not like in one little space, because there's some things that a dog comes in contact with that I think a
Yeah.
lot of kids can kind of engage with. So, how do you want this new story to
So,
resonate
I
with
mean,
people?
everybody has experienced a lot of grief and loss over the past 2+ years. Like, that's something I think that we all can
Mm-hmm.
connect on right now. Each of us have possibly lost someone that was close to us even before this pandemic stuff. But Break This House is largely
Mm-hmm.
about loss and reconciliation with that loss, or reconciliation with family, and like dealing with all of the grief and the anger that comes up with losing someone who you didn't really expect to miss. And having complex
Yeah.
relationships with your family, and like the expectation of being closer to people that you're not so close to. And I want people to come away from reading Break This House when it eventually does come out, feeling like they have permission to feel all the feelings, because that's what I did when I was writing the book. I was really thinking about all the things that I have been taught I'm not supposed to say about somebody that I love, all the things that I'm not supposed to
Yeah.
feel about somebody that I love, and all of the things that you're just supposed to keep buried down, and you're supposed to act like you don't feel, you're supposed to act like you're not going through, you're supposed to act like, you know what, I moved on, I'm in my new life, I'm doing a new thing, da da da. And I don't think that grief or loss works that way. Like, you know what I mean? My mom passed a little bit over 3 years ago, and sometimes it feels like it happened
Yeah.
yesterday. And so I really wanted to create a story that gave young people and people of all ages the permission to tap into that rage, because I know we all have it. I know we all have it, and I really saw
Absolutely.
my own this past year. And I just let myself sit with it. Like, I let myself sit with like the good memories, the terrible memories, the things I'm mad about, the things that I'm like, wow, when I think about that, I feel so much love in my heart. Like, there's all these things that can come up when you lose someone. And I want us to kind of think about like what comes up when we lose a person, what comes up when we lose our old childhood neighborhoods, our communities. A lot of our neighborhoods are being, a lot of our neighborhoods are being just like run through. Like, the housing crisis is a real
Yeah.
thing. And a lot of us like go back home, in the book, Yamina goes back home and does not recognize her old neighborhood because that's how much it's changed. And so there is a parallel between
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
losing her mom and losing her childhood home, and how she feels about that, and how she thought like, oh, you know, when something bad happens, you try to just leave it behind. I'm over that. Like, nothing good comes of that place anymore. It's always drama, it's always pain, it's always this or that. But like going back and being like, wow, like there's lots of pain here, but I still don't want someone to come in and take my community from me, my family from me, the place that all of my firsts were. So I wanted to create a
Yeah.
space for
Yeah.
us to grieve. We need all the space that we can get to grieve, and also all of the space we can get to imagine what it would be like for us to reclaim those spaces or to intercept them being taken from us. And that's just a little tease of like what
Yeah.
happens in the book. Like, this is a different kind of gentrification book. Okay.
Yeah. I'm ready. I am ready. And which one thing you said about like allowing ourselves to sit with the grief and to feel out that rage, it just made me think back to what you were saying about why you like that the school you were at, because it allows the first school that you didn't see them kind of shut that off in children. I think that then becomes, because I'm thinking about like what we do in my school, and I get a lot of flack for
Mm,
letting kids feel that out. You know what I mean? And I just know it's good for them. I know that whole, I mean, because that's what's really wrapped up in the school to prison pipeline. That whole, you can't
mm-hmm.
act out when you
Mm-hmm.
know you should. When you know, and when everything. There's a part in your book where, a doll has been sexually assaulted, and then she talks about how the clothes
Mm-hmm.
aren't screaming loud enough for her. You know what I mean? And I was just thinking about that, like how these kids have so many things that are happening to them
Oh,
that make us
yes.
adults crumble, and we think that
Mm-hmm.
we should like put up these blocks. You know what I'm saying? That I it, I've said this to you. It annoys me about the education system. It makes me
Oh,
say I want
yeah.
to leave when I know I
Yeah.
really don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
mean, when I was working with my
tough.
my previous students at that school on their essays, reading through their essays, I was just like, wow, you've most of them had seen things that I have never seen before. Like, who am I to
Yeah, yeah,
police how they express their anger and their all of those emotions? Like, as I read those essays, I was just kind of like, wow, you completely make sense. The way that you act makes
yeah,
sense 100%. Like, I'm gonna just give you that space because clearly you're not getting it anywhere else. They tell you to be quiet in all these other classes. They tell you to follow these rules that don't make any sense to you. You go home and you have to deal with these things over and over and over again. you have to do it somewhere. Like
Yeah.
I had a therapist that asked me when I told her like, I don't like to act out on people. I don't really cuss people out. Like I'm not very like aggressive in that way. And she was just like, well, where does the rage go? Like, is it like where does it go?
Mm.
Because it doesn't disappear, right? And we can't expect
Yeah.
kids to do
Yeah.
that either. Like they have too much happening in their bodies, in their minds for us to be suggesting that like the biggest priority is behavior, good behavior.
Yes. Yes. So when did you start writing Break This House? Are you writing them at all at
So
the same
I started
time
writing
or
Break This House maybe a year after I started writing Everybody Looking. So
hmm
it's both books have pretty much taken the same amount of time. I started writing Break This House I think in like 2016, and it comes out in May.
yeah. Yeah, because I'm thinking about how that must be when you come to writing kind of as a poet, and now you're making that shift into a novelist, like you said earlier. And when I read the little bit that you have available already, that you guys can read through the
Hmm.
newsletter, again, that you should subscribe to, um, I noticed that you managed to maintain the meticulous nature of your word choice, the attention to detail, your ability to describe things as they are in moments. I'm talking about how you know that the store clerk adds things up out loud, how to explain how a character chooses not to remember another's choices every time they see them. How did you manage to keep that in between these works written so
Well,
differently,
poetry is
genre
in
wise?
me. Like I started
Mm,
really studying it and writing it seriously when I was 19 years old. I'm 34 now, and so it's just in everything that I write. Like even I've heard people say when I'm talking to people, I sound like a poet. And so I
yeah,
didn't, I mean, I don't think I thought about it too much. I always, whenever I approach anything that I'm working on, I want to write it like me. And there's no way that I can really write anything
yeah,
without like all of the lessons that I learned from writing a poem. Like, I feel like everybody who writes anything should read poetry, honestly, because it teaches you a lot about like, it just teaches you about like making sure every single word does work. Like it teaches you about intention. It
yeah,
teaches you just about like making the time that you use actually like matter. Like it really
yeah,
poetry is literally for everyone. It's a great exercise in just choice. Like that's what you're teaching kids. If you teach
yeah,
poetry, you're
yeah.
teaching kids about making choices.
Word, word, a word. Okay, so question. What is the question that you wished people asked you during interviews?
I don't know. Wow, that's like
You you and Darnell looked in the same place when I asked you that question. Is that question over there? Is it?
well, I have a hat on the wall right there. It's a very
Okay,
beautiful
all right.
corner. Um,
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. Is the question what is on that
no,
wall? I mean, is that the question?
well, it's a hat that I really like. It's a hat I wore in my
Uh-huh.
latest author shoot when I did my first headshots last year.
Oh,
So
I think I okay, okay.
I really like, or I wish people would ask more personal things in interviews just because I didn't come to
hmm
writing. I didn't really claim this identity as artist until like maybe 5 years ago. So I really
Yeah.
constantly, as I'm making things, I am making things as a person, like a person just experiencing life and putting it into something else. And so yeah, I think the child in me still really deeply desires to be understood, and so I like people to ask me questions, like genuine questions about me. Um, yeah, because I don't always have the artist answer for things. Like I oftentimes will be like, watching these lives or these other virtual events, and I'm hearing other artists talk, and I'm just like the vocab that they're using, like this when they're talking craft, I'm like, who are you? Like I'm wow, do I read
Yes,
enough books?
yes.
Probably not. I don't know. So I
Every time I leave one of these, I feel like I haven't read
yeah.
enough. Every time. And I saw Philip just pull up. Oh my God. When I interviewed Philip, Philip B. Williams, I was just like, I know
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, so
You
I
know?
feel like in interviews, I really, or I guess what I'm really saying is I prefer people to ask more down to earth questions. You were giving me a mix of the two today. But I like, yeah, I like really down to earth
Hmm.
conversations just because in these interviews, I feel like it's one of few times in our everyday lives now where I get to just connect with another human being and like talk about how it is that we're navigating and how we're surviving. And those conversations are just really interesting to me.
Okay, okay. I love it. I love it. Well, um, thank everyone for being here. Candice, thank you for your work. And thank you for these books, this book and the book that's coming, and the amazing newsletter, and all the amazing essays I know that are coming, and the impending possible cool things with fashion that I'll get to just watch. So I know you ain't just, too interested in like, busting out, maybe coming out with a clothing line. I know you're an expert. I don't know what with the hat. I was like, yo, I want a hat to hover like that for me. When I saw it, I think it's on the website, the color, I was like, yo, that hat is hatting. That hat is hatting.
No,
And I want a hat to hat like me. And I start to Memphis bleak it today, so my hat would be hatting. But
do
I'm trying to grow
you,
locks,
I mean, do
so
you know
I didn't
Rashid
want to
Copeland?
expose.
Do you know who that is? He is
Uh-uh.
like one of my
Uh-uh.
peer mentors. He's a poet based in DC, amazing writer. He styled me for that shoot. He helped style me for that shoot, and he was the one who told me to get
Yep.
that hat. So that's who you need to be looking
Hmm.
at because I am accidentally fashionable. So it's an accident.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, Arnold's not the best. I mean, because I remember you were like in the middle of a creek, or something in one of your, and I was like, yo, if I ever sit in the creek, I too want to be that cool. All the times I've sat in the creek, I did not look as cool as Candace is looking in that
Oh
creek.
my
See, I
God.
be,
I can't. My face hurts.
yes. Well, I'll leave you with that. But thank you. You are a light. I have been learning so much just from watching your stories. Like when I see you like challenge yourself to like 800 words or something for the day, I'm like, okay, I need to do 800
Oh,
on
it's
what
coming.
I
Your
hope can
your
become a
novel is
novel.
coming. All that reading you
Someday.
do, come on. Come on.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So I thank you for being a light and
Thank
sharing
you.
yourself with us. And when the new book comes, I got the
Okay.
questions for it. Just be prepared,
Okay.
and we're gonna do that
Okay.
thing. All right.
All
All
right.
right. Well,
Peace.
peace, peace, peace. Well, man.